When a guest comes to Serve 6.8, they sign in with their phone by scanning a QR code which takes them to the church's Resource Center sign-in page. It's important to be sure that you see the correct church's name on the sign-in page to be sure that they are signing in to the correct location. If they cannot scan on their phone, they can sign in on one of our devices, or you can help them sign in on your phone if you would like to do that for them. Before offering that, please try to help them learn to scan the code on their own phone to help make it go faster for them in the future. Your phone and our devices won't always be immediately available to them. So it's good for them to know how to do it on their own device or on a friend's device. At this point, they are ready to select the appropriate form. If it's their first time visiting any Serve 6.8 Resource Center, they'll tap First Visit Form. If they have been to a Serve 6.8 Resource Center before, they'll tap Returning Visit Form. The colors of the Spanish buttons correlate with the English ones. Only the fields with a red asterisk are mandatory, and it's pretty standard form. Dates and phone numbers do have to be entered in a very specific format though. For dates, the month has to be first, then the day, then the 4-digit year. It can't contain any spaces, and the month, day, and year need to be separated by forward slashes. If it's done in this format, the system will accept it. If it's not, it won't accept it, and they'll have to do it all over again. Most countries don't write dates like we do in the U.S., so we often need to remind our foreign guests that the month comes first, and it's good to remind them that 4 digits are required for the year. Phone numbers need to be entered with 10 digits separated by hyphens. If they do not have a U.S. phone number, they can just enter 000-000-0000.
Some of the questions have a pop-up menu that require the guests to tap the answer that they want to choose.
A first-time guest form will show our full release of information. They'll need to check the I agree box after they read it and enter today's date before they hit send. The field that says List Approved Agency is almost always blank. This field will only be used in very specific cases that won't be covered in this video because you'll probably never use it. After they hit send, it will think for a couple seconds and then it will accept their submission. Therefore, returning back to the form selection page. Now let's take a look at the returning intake. This is a form that our guests will fill out if they have ever been a guest at Serve 6.8 before. This form is much shorter and much easier. The guests will just need to enter their first name, last name, and date of birth, being careful again to make sure that they enter the month, /day, /4-digit year. Quick note about the year, I suggest not using the drop-down menu for the year because the system doesn't always enter it into the field. Typing it in usually works better. After selecting the services they are here for, they will then click the Next button. At the top of the next page, it says something that no one ever reads. It says, has your contact information changed? If yes, complete the fields. If no, press the Next button. So none of this page needs to be filled out if there are no changes since the last time they visited. So almost all of our recent guests will press Next on this page without filling anything out. In fact, the next 2 pages also, if there are no changes on their income or family information. So really, repeat guests usually just type their name, date of birth, hit Next 3 times, and that gets them to the final page. This is faster for them and reduces the chance of having errors on the form, especially the phone number field, which causes many guests to have to redo it. The final page just asks if they have any prayer requests or if they are interested in getting involved in a group. Then they press Send, and they're ready for us to check them in. Easy, isn't it? Now they've done their part by signing in. Now let's talk about how we check them in and out. To check guests in and out, we are going to use the web page you see on your screen right now. We'll use this web page for both checking them in and out. So let's talk about checking guests in first. When we check guests in, it's easiest to just use our own phone, and we'll go to serve68.org/caredata on our phone's browser.
That brings us to this page. Start off by tapping the church name we are currently at. That brings up a form that we can use to check the individual out, but we also use this form to check people in. To do that, we're going to touch the field that says Individual. It looks like a field that we would be able to type in, but it's not. When we tap that field, it brings up a menu of all of the guests that have signed in at our church today. By default, they are all listed in alphabetical order by the guests' first names column. When I check someone in, I will often click the last modified date column twice because that will sort the list so that the guests that just signed in will be at the top of the list. Makes it easier. And to check someone in, all we need to do is find their name on the list, which should be easy if they filled out the form. Once we see that they have their name on the form, we can let them know that they are free to start selecting their food and clothes items. You'll also want to look at the resources needed column. If they have selected anything other than food and clothing, they will likely need to speak with one of our financial volunteers, which we call navigators. So you will need to let the navigators know that someone is waiting to speak with them. That's all you need to do to check somebody in. To check the next person in, you can refresh your browser so that the most recent sign-ins show up, and you're good to go. Now let's talk about how we check the guest out. The process starts again at www.serve68.org/care-data. You can use a laptop or device to do this, but it is very helpful to have a keyboard while checking guests out. Select the person's name by clicking on it. The name will turn green. Scroll down and click Done.
Then you work your way down the form, filling out each applicable field. Person entering the notes, that's you. The service category is food, clothing, and hygiene. The service is food, clothing, and households. If they're only getting food or food clothing, you can choose that instead, but it really doesn't matter. So I just use the food, clothing, households to make it a fast, easy choice. We'll enter the weight of the clothing and food, households if they do have them, and you can round instead of using decimals. If the guest is able to contribute a donation, we check the paid checkbox and enter the amount they contributed in the paid amount field. The next section is for navigator notes, which we will skip for now because those need to be entered separately. So just scroll all the way down to the bottom of the form and click Send. Once it goes back to an empty form, you are ready to check out the next guest.
If you just watched that video and you're like, wow, now I have more questions than I had before I watched the video, don't worry. Once you do this a few times, you'll get the hang of it. Let us know if you have any questions, and thank you so much for serving your community with Serve 6.8.